We'll now move on. As Len mentioned, and I think Bruce did as well, leadership development has been a long-term priority for Gardiner Foundation. We've invested in a range of development activities for the industry and for people in dairy communities, importantly, for many years. And the Australian Dairy Plan emphasises the importance of leadership and the importance of the influence that it has on culture in the industry and how people both within and outside the industry view all of us. We in Gardiner have had a philosophy that has essentially been around the premise that we don't just provide leadership development opportunities for people who are aspiring to or already in formal leadership roles in the industry, albeit of course they are very important, but we see leadership as being something that applies right across the spectrum, from people who are just starting out on a farm through to those working in the service support industry, be they pre-farm gate, post-farm gate, but also in the communities that support our industry. And we also have had the view that leadership's not just about the skills and knowledge people have, but it's also about, and in many respects, perhaps more importantly about, what's the mindsets and behaviours that they have and bring to that leadership function. So in fact, our next session will talk with 4 people who have come from different parts of the industry and dairy communities, and they've participated in some activities that the Gardiner Foundation has funded. I think you'll find their stories both interesting, entertaining, and also inspiring. Our MC for this next session will be Richard Meredith. Richard is the Program Manager for our People and Community Development Program. Richard will introduce the 4 people. He'll also describe the approach to the process and the opportunity that you will have for asking questions of the people. And he'll be supported in that Q&A element by Amabel Grinter, who is our project coordinator for the People and Community Development Program. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Clive, and welcome everybody. Before we start, if I could just do a little bit of housekeeping. I can see already, and thank you for those people who have already put some nice comments in the chat box. If you run your cursor along the bottom of your screen, you'll find a button that's called Q&A. Now that's the button to use if you'd like to ask any questions of the panel or the 2 chairs or Clive at the end of the panel session. All you need to do is simply type your questions into the panel when you touch the Q&A button, and then we'll pick them up and Amabel and I will work through those at the end of the session. So thank you very much, and let's make a start. So as Clive has said, this session is largely about leadership, and first statement I want to make about leadership is that it is a real conscious learning journey. And I think for many people, this may come as a surprise. Many people think leaders are born, not made, though I think that's changing a lot. But leadership we find now is very much like other life skills, whether it's milking cows or playing football, that it can be learned and it can be improved on. And this is probably the most important change that we're seeing in leadership development today. And that is the idea that leadership is for everyone and is a never-ending learning journey. The legendary US industrialist Jack Welch once said, "Before you're a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others." Today, we're going to explore a little of that learning journey with our panel. Our panel is made up of 2 people who've undertaken formal leadership training under Gardiner-sponsored programs, a leadership development facilitator, and a young dairy farmer who's not yet undertaken formal leadership training, but is building leadership skills and knowledge in her workplace. So let's start with Susie Jacobs, a former dairy farmer living in a dairy community in Northern Victoria, and Stuart Crosswaite, a dairy farmer from Northern Victoria, or Northeastern Victoria, I'm sorry. Welcome to you both. Susie is currently completing the Loddon Murray Community Leadership Program, and Stuart is currently completing the Australian Rural Leadership Program. So my first question is to you both, and I'll put it in order for you, but thinking back before you decided on your leadership training program, how did you think about leadership and yourself as a leader back then? If I can start with you, Susie.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me today. The way I see leadership prior to doing the leadership program was a really quite distorted view. And I seen leaders I felt leaders were well-educated, dominant, ego-driven extroverts that led from the front. And doing the leadership program, I soon realised that, you know, for me, that leaders weren't that kind of people. They were people that worked together in the community to achieve goals to support their community.
Thank you, Susie. And if I could cross over to you, Stuart. So what was your thinking about leadership and yourself as a leader back then?
Thank you. Thanks everyone for inviting me along. Yeah, I probably looked at the footy coach or the Prime Minister as someone who inspires and takes people on a journey. In terms of myself, I probably saw myself as someone who I had a background where I went and studied in New Zealand and in Melbourne, and then I worked in the dairy industry with 2 milk companies as a farm consultant. And so I saw myself as having a unique background who could potentially show people a better way, maybe, a need to invest, a need to innovate, and that there was just an amazing opportunity in the dairy industry. So for myself, I hate negative people. I always see the positive aspects of anything. So, you know, a glass half full. But we do tend to get a lot of that, you know, that negative stuff. And I think every industry has a large gap between good and bad operators. And I was lucky to, I suppose, experience all of that in my previous careers before going farming. And I see the opportunity that the industry has in front of it. And I suppose I see myself as someone who can potentially open people's eyes to that opportunity.
Thank you, Stuart. So back to you, Susie. What got you interested in applying for the Lead Loddon Murray program?
Last year, I worked for a charity called Rural Aid, and I worked in Victoria and southern New South Wales, supporting and advocating farmers through drought, you know, and crisis. I found it a really negative space, and I started to burn out. So I decided to take some time off from that space and look at personal development and work on myself, you know, and make positive change within the community. So I had quite a few people say to me, Suze, you should do a leadership program. So I contacted the Loddon Murray leadership program, and I was successful in obtaining a Gardiner Foundation scholarship, and that started my leadership journey and my journey into positive change in rural communities and agriculture. So I'm really grateful and very fortunate for having the scholarship, and it's been an absolute life-changing experience.
Thank you, Susie. What about you, Stuart? What prompted you to apply for the ARLP scholarship? ARLP.
I see the opportunity I have as a leader, and when in a leadership role, to be more inclusive and dynamic, to utilise the skills of the people and the experience, of the people around me. I suppose I was thrust into leadership roles, and I was really probably leading by example and not being that inclusive. And part of the ARLP is really about understanding yourself a bit more. So I've concluded I have a personality that is about getting the task done and quickly moving on to the next one. And sometimes I think that's at odds with some of the personalities maybe in the room or working with me. So I think people see me in leadership roles because I get the job done right. But I feel sometimes I'm probably not bringing them along with me. So I need to get better at that. And I think the great thing with the ARLPs is there's an alumni, and we're just lucky to have a lot of alumni in our region, and a lot of them prompted and pushed me to have a crack at it.
Lovely. Thank you, Stuart. I'll just now go to Jude Hannah. Welcome, Jude. It's a nice segue for you. You're a leadership facilitator with Lead Loddon Murray. What do you see as the most important benefits of leadership development training? And perhaps you can, while you're answering that, give us some examples, even how you see Susie's development as a leader. I'm sure she won't mind, over the past 9 months in the course.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks to the Gardiner Foundation for their tremendous support of our program. I think some of the key benefits that really stand out of our program is that we really immerse our participants in the regional context. So looking at both the regional and rural centres, we certainly focus a lot. You made a great comment, Richard, also about really understanding self. So we do a lot of understanding of self, what's our strengths, what's the areas of improvement. Another core area of learning is around leadership of others and systems, and that's everything from governance, advocacy, conflict resolution and team building. And then finally, we look at the leadership of communities. I believe the program really benefits the participants to think outside the square. It's like participants like Susie, who are the quiet achievers in their communities. And if I could have probably 24 participants like Susie, it would make my job a lot easier. Someone who comes into the program with self-doubt sometimes, they're teachable. People who come in with big egos is sometimes hard to break that. So I think that, you know, coming from a farm myself, I grew up with a father who was very quiet, very insular. He was very nervous in public, and on his bucket list was to be able to speak in public. And I've always been a big advocate for our farming communities having a voice, and that's what I believe is one of the great strengths of Loddon Murray community leadership, is getting those voices out in our rural communities and particularly in our farming communities. If I can give you an example of some of the great work that happens through the program, particularly with our community projects, is we have another participant this year that you're sponsoring, called Joe Holloway. Joe is actually from the rural community, and his project is around creating accessibility for disabled people in the community. Last year we had someone else focused on that project, so we were actually being able to match the two of them together and working on that focus. Just quickly, and to finish off with Susie, and I know she won't mind me blowing her trumpet, but I remember when she first came to me at the opening retreat that we have in Echuca, and you know, she had really big doubts about her ability, and to see her evolve in the climate that we've had to really navigate this year on an online learning environment, how she has lifted the spirits of others who have been the doubtful ones about, are we getting a comprehensive learning online? She's been actively out in community, working with other participants, delivering food hampers around mental health. You know, she's a great woman. I think she's, with this leadership under her belt, watch this space. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Jude. Lovely. And it's now my pleasure to turn to Angela Dunstan. Welcome, Angela. Angela, you came into the dairy industry from a nursing background about 5 years ago, and I think you've been working for Stuart now for about 3 years. So can you tell us what's changed in the way your team works together and how has that been for you?
Thank you, Richard. A few things have changed as we've established a core set of values that as a group we came up with. Teamwork is very important value to me, and as a group we have developed a better understanding on how to communicate together, especially using our phones, with Google Sheets and a WhatsApp, as we are rarely all together in one spot at the same time. Stuart has also given us specific work titles that have individual area of responsibility. My work title is Herd Manager, and in that role, all the other staff can come to me as a first point of call. This gives me a sense of ownership in my specific area, but Stuart as the leader is always there for advice and guidance. This has made me feel valuable to the business. I think having a responsibility of being the herd manager has definitely developed my leadership skills. I've always been one that stands back and lets others make decisions, but Stuart has been a great teacher with great knowledge that he's willing to share. He pushes me to learn and take on more responsibility. He supports me and is encouraging.
Thank you, Angela. That's great. And I was going to ask you another question, but I think you've answered it, which is the question. I mean, you do see yourself much more as a leader now than you did a year ago, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. And I think you illustrated that through your responsibilities and the way your team works together. So that's great. Before we go on, just a quick reminder, those in case you didn't pick it up earlier on or you've come in late, if you want to ask a question, we'll take questions at the end. Please put them into the Q&A. Now that's at the bottom of your screen. If you run along the bottom of your screen, you'll find the button there. And the Q&A is the place to write questions, and then we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the session. Thank you. Now, if I can just circle back to Susie. Susie, can you give us an insight into how your thinking about leadership has changed? You made a big statement about what you thought a leader was before you started earlier, and thank you for that. So how's your thinking about leadership changed through doing the program, about what leadership is?
Thanks, Richard. Look, I now see leadership as working together to empower and inspire others for positive change, and that we're all equals, and that I am worthy now. You know, I had so much self-doubt last year, and I was leading through community, and that self-doubt probably contributed to me burning out. And the leadership programs taught me to look after my well-being, understand who I am, and that way I can understand others. And it's given me that confidence to step up and take on things that I normally wouldn't do, because I would have that negative bias in my head saying you can't do it. Whereas now I can, I have the confidence to say yes, I can. And Jude and I the other day were having a conversation about my growth, and she came up with this little story. You know, she said that, you know, I see that you've jumped in the boat and you've put up the sails and you've set sail and you're off. And then she sees the little bit of self-doubt come in, and she's at the beach saying, keep going, you know. So, you know, now I'm keeping on going. I'm not actually on the beach anymore. So, you know, I still want to continue my leadership journey, supporting and building resilience and capacity in rural communities, and being that positive change, and looking at, you know, crisis and all those negative things as opportunities for change, and having people look forward to the future and not look back.
It is amazing how overcoming imposter syndrome and building some confidence can make a huge change to your mental attitude, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Mindset, you know,
yeah, absolutely.
Change in mindset. Yeah. You know.
Thanks, Susie. I'm going to turn back to Stuart now. Stuart, as Angela has mentioned, you've made some changes in the way your staff work together in your business since you've been doing the ARLP program. Can you describe those changes and why you made them? And tell us a little bit also about how you see yourself as having changed as a leader and the way you act as a leader.
Sure. Look, like most dairy farms, I've been farming for 15 or 16 years now, And we've had our fair share of turnover over the years. So we've turned a lot of staff over. And I concluded that, and we've grown the farm a lot, but I concluded that if we wanted to continue to grow, I needed to find a better way to employ people and manage people. I think, you know, I think a lot of dairy farmers treat their people like their cows sometimes. And, you know, we just have to do it a better way if we want to grow. Growth is going to rely on us being better with our people management. So, look, as Angela said, over the space of a few months, we gravitated to a core set of values. And I really tried to, and this was hard for me, but I really tried to not be involved. I wanted them to come up with it. And those values were really probably the starting ingredients of trying to build a culture in our workplace where we had a bit of a baseline that we could, you know, discipline people. We could, you know, have a baseline how we treated our cattle, how we treated the equipment, how we treated each other. So we ended up gravitating to a core set of values. I think it's worth Ange telling them what they were, but so honesty was one of them. So, you know, being honest with each other and not hiding, you know, if you smashed the tractor or you, you know, did something that you're not proud of, being honest about it. Teamwork. So I think a lot of dairy farms, and maybe in agriculture as general, we have very small teams. So teamwork's critical. Respecting each other. So I think part of that respect is if Ange tells me something personal that I don't go and then spread that to the other couple of members, because then you've got a toxic workplace. Attention to detail and diligence. So I think running a really good business, dairy business, requires attention to detail with everything. So that was a pretty important ingredient. But I think that the main one for me is that I think for a long time, I was making all the decisions, and it's draining on me, but also not valuing the people around me. So having the last one we came up was creativity and innovation. So I'm investing in 3 people. Why don't I use their brains and their intelligence and their ideas about innovation? So yeah, it's been a good sort of set of values. And the last one's education. So if I've got people that are learning, they seem to be more engaged, and you know, so I've got a unique background where I can teach them about the science and various aspects of farming. So from that, we set up a structure where underneath me, we have an assistant herd manager, an assistant maintenance manager, and an assistant feed manager, and they all report to me. So there, I'm now acting more as a mentor, more as a facilitator and an educator. And the farm can now operate without me present. And I think it's given the people more confidence amongst themselves to solve problems and initiate solutions. And at the end of the day, it's bloody tiring making all the little decisions, and being able to walk away and know that the farm can operate by itself and you've got really capable people, it's so satisfying.
Thank you, Stuart. And I'll flick back to you, Angela. I should have asked you what the values were before, Stuart, but anyway, Stuart's given us the rundown. I am interested, though, to know your reflections on those values, or any particular values that you found particularly valuable in your work.
Well, as I said before, teamwork was really important to me. And I think setting those values, we now are communicating better together.
Yeah, okay. I've got another question for you while I have you there in the chair. As a young dairy farmer, do you have any plans for your own future leadership development?
I'd like to apply for the Alpine Valley Community Leadership Program next year.
Are there specific things you're looking for through a program like that?
I'd just like to build more confidence in making my decisions.
Great, great. I'm going to now ask a general question of all of you, and so I'll go around one at a time, as that's the way the webinar works. But if you can just take this question on board, if you were to think of one benefit that you've witnessed or experienced either in others or yourself, through the application of good leadership, what would it be? I start with you, Jude.
Oh, Richard, one, come on.
I know. Focus.
You know, I'd definitely say do the work on understanding yourself and your leadership style, because how many local councillors have we seen with the cringe factor that really have no self-awareness? Definitely, and understand the lens that you view the world through is very important. To be a true servant leader, it's really take a step back, speak thoughtfully and carefully, and listen thoroughly without bias. And sorry, that's more than one.
No, that's a lovely combination of great ideas, and thank you. I think you've encapsulated that really well. Thank you for that. So if I can, I'm going to move quickly to Susie, if you can respond to the same question, Susie.
Mine is recognise other skills, just like Stuart said. You know, we learned in the leadership program that everyone has different skill sets and different personality types. So, you know, I was, my background was nursing previous, and so I therefore look at well-being as you know, caring for people and stuff like that. So you need to recognise other people's skills and ask for help. That's
Thank
me.
you. And Stuart.
Oh, I'm going to buck the trend too. I'm going to give you more than one, but look, the main benefits I've witnessed and experienced are, for me, you know, I think leadership is about managing yourself better. So that, I think Jude mentioned the self-awareness and awareness of people. That's really important, and that's something I've really learned. But on the back of that, I've witnessed and experienced a better work-life balance, because that was terrible. My days off were going to meetings. A more productive workplace. So I'm investing in these people. How about we get a better outcome for the business? And satisfaction levels, like, you know, our cows are happy. We do a great job with them. Why aren't our people happy? So I'm really pleased to see, or hopefully the staff getting more enjoyment out of being there and connecting people. So I think the great leaders that I think about connect you with who you need to be talking to.
Thank you, Stuart. And so, Ange, on the same question.
I think the good leadership is how we have the values and how we've agreed to how we want to treat each other, how we want to treat the cows, and how we want to work together.
Yeah. Great. Terrific. Okay, thank you. And I think I've got time for another question. I'll just do this go around quickly. We've got a few questions in the chat, in the Q&A, so we'll come to them next. Yeah. So this is just a quick one for everybody. I'll start with you, Jude. What is the leadership behaviour you'd most like to improve or in yourself or aspire to in yourself?
I would say, Richard, the ability to provide sage wisdom in a calm, respected and authentic leadership way, be comfortable in my own skin, speak with clarity and raise those up around me to reveal their greatness.
Thank you. Thank you. Susie?
Recognise when to say no, because when you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else.
Great. Thank you. Stuart?
Sorry, what was the question?
What is the leadership behaviour you would most like to improve or aspire to in yourself?
Be more inclusive.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. And Angela?
I'd like to be more assertive. I'd like to be confident in my ability. I'd like to be clear and controlled in how I say things.
Great, lovely. All right, beautiful. That finishes that very well. And thank you all. Now, we do have some questions, so I'm going to pass over to Amabel, who'll take us through the questions that have been put onto the Q&A, Amabel.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them through to the Q&A. Sorry if we don't get to all of them right now, but we're going to start with one from our newly appointed chair, Len Stevens. He has asked, have you thought about how your leadership style might adapt to the Trumpian world of identity politics, history rewriting, fake news, and anti-establishment movements?
Who'd like to start? Oh, Jude, you're on. I don't know how that happened, but you didn't get a choice.
Gee, thanks, Len. That was a really good one, wasn't it? Wow. Let me focus a bit on the world of identity politics. You know, my hope as being a program facilitator of leadership is really to create new leaders who sit in those powerful positions and really lead from authentic self. I think, without getting too politically driven, I think we need people who can, you know, I think Brene Brown, words come to me quite often as, she said, if those that don't come into the ring with you to address powerful issues, and all the only ones throwing stones at you are in a stadium, listen to those who are in the ring with you. So I think it's about really, we've got a chance now to really rewrite history on how we develop leaders to sit in those political positions.
Thank you, Jude. It's optional. If anybody else would like to jump in, any of the other panelists would like to jump in, please. Okay, Stuart.
I struggle, like a lot of people, with Donald Trump, but I think being authentic and being aware and being adaptable is really important in leadership. So I think also we try to probably solve all of the problems at once rather than focusing on just one little problem and doing that really well, create a bit of momentum and then build on that and build on that and build on that. I think Donald Trump, you know, the Trumparian sort of ways, yeah, I struggle with that a bit. But I think we've got an opportunity with the dairy plan to not try and fix everything at once, but just work on a few key things and build a better culture and a better environment for all of us.
Thanks, Stuart. Anybody else want to jump in, or we can move to the next question? Okay, we'll go to the next question, I think, Amabel.
So we have a question here from Pippa Connolly. She's asking, as aspiring leaders in the farming community, what is the big issue that you need to get across to the non-farming community to achieve enduring change?
Stuart's enthusiastic. Oh, Susie.
No, Stuart.
Look, I think I've done a lot of work in the northeast of Victoria with the Alpine Valleys Dairy Group, and we asked ourselves this question, and we thought the dairy industry is very good at telling itself that there's a great opportunity here, but we do a pretty ordinary job in the community. So I think the opportunity is to really explain to the community that dairy should be a first choice. It's a great earner. You can, you know, it's a get rich scheme if you want to go that far. But I think we have to be better at telling the community and the world that dairy and agriculture is a better opportunity. It shouldn't be a last choice. In New Zealand, young people aspire to be dairy farmers. I don't see why we don't have that culture. So my goal with all of this is to get to that point where it's first choice rather than last choice.
Thank you, Stuart. Amabel, I think we have time for just one more question.
Yeah, so we have a question here asking, so we all want to see diversity in leadership. Having young people involved in the industry, leadership roles and discussions is an example of this. What do you believe we need to do differently to encourage the involvement of young people in industry leadership roles and decision making?
Any volunteers?
I can speak to that, Richard.
Certainly, thank you.
You know, I feel at the moment what we're doing with our leadership programs certainly is that we certainly embrace our young into the program. The 2 Gardiner reciprocants last year in our program were in their early 20s. They were young women working on dairy farms up near Echuca. What I do like about these leadership programs to be able to encourage young ones in is that they come into an environment where they first think, oh my gosh, there's a lot of oldies here, but the wisdom that's passed on, I think it's just about getting into conversations with younger people. I believe that our education systems should be having conversations around career development, around access to leadership, access to industries that have all these available. So yeah, these programs definitely have diversity, and I think we're getting there.
Thank you, Jude. Susie, did you want to speak?
No, thanks, Richard.
No, okay, all right. That's fine. Anybody else want to tackle that one? Okay, thank you, Jude. That was really good. And I think, Amabel, I think we're at the end of our time, aren't we?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry about the questions that weren't answered there, but there were some really good ones that came through, so thank you.
And I would just like to thank the 4 panellists, Angela Dunstan, Susie Jacobs, Jude Hannah and Stuart Crosswaite, for your time and experience and sharing your wisdom and experience with all of us this morning. It's been really great, or this afternoon, sorry, I should say. And with that, thank you again, and thank you for all those who attended. I'll now hand back to Clive to close the session.
Thanks very much, Richard. And in particular, I want to thank Stuart, Jude, Susie and Angela. I don't know, but I'm sure everyone else, I always find it inspiring to hear the stories of individuals, no matter what point in their learning they are. And to be honest, whilst I respect deeply the leaders that we've got in the industry currently, perhaps it's because as I get older, but I always get really inspired by the younger ones and those that are on their learning journey. And I think the comments that we heard not only reflect the importance of us needing to take a different perspective on leadership and being leaders, but also the powerful impact it has on communities, on businesses and on individuals. And then in turn, the powerful impact it can have on how the industry is perceived. A couple of you mentioned, the impact on culture. Stuart, I think you talked about the perception of our industry, and the collective views that you've put forward are certainly strongly reflected in the commitments that are in the dairy plan. And one of the challenges for us is not only how do we broaden the opportunities for people to do the sort of leadership courses that you guys have all either delivered or are participating in, but then there was also, I think that last question was, how do we actually give people that have got more opportunity? How do we give young people more opportunity to display those leadership skills? So there's some real challenges for us there. And one of the reasons why Gardiner, we put an emphasis not only in giving people access to these sort of development opportunities, but it's why we put an emphasis on getting stories around people stories, if you like, out into the press that we do, because stories from individuals are extremely powerful. We've run out of time now. Can I thank our 2 chairs, the outgoing chair, Bruce, and incoming chair, Len, the panellists. Can I thank Richard and Amabel and also the other Gardiner staff who have worked hard to get this together and do throughout the year. It's a privilege for me to work with you. Can I thank all of our attendees again, and I think Len said this really well, but also Bruce. Gardiner can really only be as strong as the partnerships and the collaborations that we have with others such as you individually in the organisations. And we very much look forward to working with you over the coming year. So enjoy the rest of the day, and let's hope for another strong season in the dairy industry going ahead. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.